So I walked into my dad's liquor store. It was a liquor store in New Jersey, one store unit. In 1996, I launched an e-commerce version of it called Wine Library. And as you can imagine, especially with e-commerce being cool right now, the fact that I was doing e-commerce 23 years, you know, you're talking about, it was real pioneer shit. It really worked. The business went from a $4 to a $60 million business over a very short period of time, changed the course of my family's life. I had done what I wanted, which is help my family. I owned none of that business. I did good, I did right by my family. And then YouTube came. So I built that business on the back of e-commerce, email marketing, which was revolutionary at the time, and then Google AdWords, which was also completely revolutionary at the time. Then YouTube came, and I started a wine show on YouTube a couple months after YouTube, and that exploded. And at that point, I realized, wait a minute, I'm not a great wine merchant, I'm a great marketer, I'm a great businessman. And then YouTube sold to Google for $1.7 billion. And to put into context for your listeners, $1.7 billion in 2006 would be like if you heard that TikTok sold for $1 trillion today. It was a big number. It wasn't, you know, now we have all the billions running around. This was back in the day of hundreds of millions. Billions weren't being talked about. So that was like, fuck, that was huge. And I was like, damn it. What? And I started reading articles on the internet about it. I'm like, what's this angel investor? Like I started seeing some terminology. I literally Googled angel investor. I'm like, person that gets into a deal before it goes public. I'm like, I like that. I'm gonna do that. And literally right there, I'm like, I'm gonna start doing that. And so I started really going to tech conferences like a couple months later, and I got an incredible opportunity to invest in Twitter from one of the early employees, the original CTO, and I did that. And then I made a video about Twitter versus Facebook. That went viral at Facebook. I spoke to Facebook. Mark was in the audience. He came down and we had dinner. I got friendly, and a couple months later he called me and said his parents were looking to sell some stock. And you know, I think he said my parents. I said yes, you know? So I got to invest in that. And then I was getting greedy. I was like, okay, I got the two things I want. And then within 5 minutes of realizing Tumblr was winning at junior high, I intuitively was like, okay, that's got a shot, and started, you know, really looking at it, had some ideas how to make it better, met David Karp, the founder of it, and got to invest in that. And so right out the gate, I had a Hall of Fame investing career. All three of those were monster exits for me, game-changing, generational wealth returns. And then I invested more and I did well, you know, Birchbox and Uber and lots of little different things, but never to the same level. Even with Snapchat and Pinterest and Uber, which were big wins for me, that was when I didn't think I was an investor. That's when I was just making smart decisions. You know, I like that feeling. Let me tell you something very funny. I feel like I'm nowhere to that level, but I'm in a very smart decision zone right now. I know that sports trading cards are about to explode. I know that I'm 43 and my generation of fathers now is starting to have children right around 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I know that gambling is a huge culture, and the way sports cards are today is you can pull a $50,000 Zion card. And I know that the sneaker kids can't get enough inventory of hard to get sneakers to flip on StockX. So they're moving to sports cards where they can buy 1,000, and if they're right, they can really make money. So literally, this is not a joke, and it seems very small and detached from that 2009 era, 7, 8, 9 era where I was doing all this investing. But sometimes I just see stuff that's very obvious to me, and you're catching me during this, literally the entire ride from the hotel to here, I'm looking up LeBron rookies, Messi and Ronaldo rookies. I think wrestling cards are underrated, so I'm looking for old Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan cards. And I think it's happening. Patience and conviction. That's it. Super simple. I will not waver. I do not believe a television commercial is worth the price in Australia versus what Instagram and Facebook and YouTube can do. I see it every day, look at the data. And if Callaway Golf or Eclipse Gum or Nike or Coca-Cola don't agree with me, I'm willing to wait. It's their money. So I can't, what am I gonna do? I chose to be in client services, so I can't cry about it. I don't dwell. I yell, and scream and pontificate and passionately plea my case, and then I just wait for history to be my co-signer.
So when the saying that the client is always right or the customer is always right, how do you deal in that scenario?
I think that the client has control. The customer is always right, except you have to be careful, right? Because there's that great saying, if I listened to my customer, I would have made faster horses, right? So to me, the consumer is the judge and the jury. A client controls the paycheck. So you can only do so much. It's like being mad at your parents. Like, if you don't like what your parents are making you do, leave. Like, don't take the money. Don't let them pay for your Uber. Don't let them pay for your clothes if you're such a tough guy, you know? And so, but I don't think they're always right, you know? But they are the judge and the jury. But the judge and the jury is sometimes wrong.
And they got the cash.
They're the judge and the jury. Like I can, again, I'm looking at these Callaway, you know, I can convey to Callaway that, like, hey, I can get to more of your customers for a better price on LinkedIn than you can in buying a print ad or those billboards, and they're just gonna, you know, a lot of companies go on reporting that has nothing to do with reality, and that's why they make bad mistakes. Listen, Vayner has built one of the largest independent shops in the world, slowly but surely, so enough people say yes, and I'm very okay with 23 out of 25 saying no.
Yeah. Speaking of cash, when are you going to knock on the Johnson's door and say, it's time for me to hand the keys over?
So the Johnson is the Johnson & Johnson, you know, empire. I don't think Woody and Chris are selling the Jets, the New York Jets, anytime soon, which is just fine because I don't have the money to buy it anyway. Yeah. The worst thing that could happen to me, and my goal is waking up this morning and finding out the Jets are for sale. I would be panicking and, you know, and scrambling and selling my soul. I don't know, but I can't worry about things I can't control. So I have to worry about building infrastructure and foundation to creating the professional success that allows me to have an at-bat for my professional dream. I'm excited that entrepreneurship has become so cool and competitive because Job's a kid. How old are you?
34.
He's a fucking child. And athletes went through generations of athletes prior to Job really struggled, living their whole life wanting to do something alpha and competitive, achieving their max goal, and then being considered old at 33. And then they had to live 70 more years. So the fact that I'm watching a lot of these guys and gals be able to transition at 35 and find a new way to compete that will actually lead to prosperity instead of depression really makes me happy. And I think that's why, you know, it's really cool to see the rise of entrepreneurship benefit so many athletes, because I think you see a lot of them really have struggled in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and now you're starting to see that become a new outlet, and I'm happy about that.
Do you think that there needs to be a really strong content footprint from these athletes online to help develop once they've finished sport?
I don't think so. I don't think it has to be. I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea to, you know, squeeze as much out while everyone's looking at you. And, you know, I'm sure Joe felt this. Like, I tell Jets players all the time, like, you better use me while you're a Jet, because I'm interested in meeting with you, because if you get traded or when you retire, it's just not as interesting. And so
that's the thing about an athlete, is you're never as relevant when you retire.
Never.
It's never going to be the same.
Never.
Yeah.
Not even Kobe right now, who's an icon.
Yeah.
It just isn't.
No.
And so I do think, but let's talk about something else. One may also be an introvert. You know, there's a lot of athletes who don't want to put out content, and that's okay. I think it's the right thing to do, but I don't think it's a requirement. I think you can go on to have a monumental business career. Mark Zuckerberg doesn't put out content every day. You know, Jeff Bezos doesn't put out content every day. Sarah Blakely doesn't put out content every day. So you could build a great business without being a content creator. It doesn't hurt. I just say I'm an entrepreneur. You know, and then if the conversation goes like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you know, I invest. I have a very large agency, advertising. They're like, what does that mean? I'm like, you know, like Mad Men, but for Facebook and Twitter and things of that nature. They're like, okay, understand that. And I speak and I produce content, I write books. So, you know, I'm not overly worried. You know, it's weird. When you're climbing, you are hungry to explain everything. When you get to a maturity in your career where you probably feel a little bit better about some of your accomplishments, things of that nature, I almost now find myself downplaying it more, right? You know, like I don't have a deep need. I almost enjoy if after I leave, if they Google it, they're like, wait a minute,
yeah.
You know, so I kind of find myself being a little less anxious or chip on my shoulder to like fully explain my resume. I go simply with entrepreneur. If they dig a little further, I'll give them more context.